everyone, this is Kayla at Inspire Adventures, and this month we're here to talk to you about a very special, inspiring animal, the Central American tapir. And I'm here with Michael, as always. How do you feel about the tapir?
Well, first of all, I'm going to have to learn how to say it better because I always called it tapir, but maybe we can always use both terms today.
Yeah, I think that the official pronunciation is tapir, rhyming with paper, but I have heard a lot of people say tapir, so I probably will today too.
Tapir. It's the same animal and one of my absolute favorites. Always a favorite when we're at the Belize Zoo or learning about, or many times we see them on our trail cameras. So I can't wait to dive right into this one today, Kayla.
Yeah, so the Central American tapir is a really interesting animal. First of all, they are the largest land animals actually found in Central America. So they can actually grow at their full adult size to be between 300 and 600 pounds. So
Wow.
These are really large animals. If you see a picture of them, they're this species of tapir. When you say tapir, sometimes it comes to mind the kind of black and white patterned animal. That is actually the Malayan or Malaysian tapir. So we're talking about a different kind here. The Central American tapir is all gray all the way through, kind of has a lighter underside to it, sometimes has some white markings on the forehead or on the chest. But when you first look at a Central American tapir, what you might think immediately of is actually an elephant, because tapirs have this really interesting kind of long proboscis. They have this very long, very flexible nose that does call to mind an elephant trunk. But tapirs are actually not closely related to elephants. They're also not very closely related to other animals that you might think of when you first see them, such as a pig. They're kind of pig-shaped. It's a little rude of me to say, but they are.
They are.
But they're not very closely related to either of those animals. Central American tapirs are actually what's known as an odd-toed ungulate.
Okay, so hold it right there, Kayla, okay? Because I knew this term was going to come up, and I really just think we should take a moment and kind of break that apart, okay? Because there's a lot going on in just saying that tapir is an odd-toed ungulate. First of all, odd-toed sounds funny, and then second, people may not know what an ungulate is. So let's go ahead and just talk about that, and we'll come back to why that they are them. Okay.
So ungulates are hoofed mammals, and this is already a little bit of a curveball, because when you look at a tapir, it doesn't look like it has hooves the way that you'd think that a deer or a horse has hooves. What they have is they have their toes kind of splayed out, and their toes are actually covered in keratin. And
keratin's like the same stuff that we find in our fingernails and our hair, right?
Yes, it's a very hard kind of protective material that they have. So they kind of have, instead of the one big hoof that maybe a horse has, they kind of have like four little hooves over their toes. You can think of it that way. But when you get into what odd-toed means for ungulates, there are two main kinds of ungulates. There's the odd-toed ungulates and the even-toed ungulates. This is a bit confusing because it doesn't actually refer to how many toes the animal has. For example, tapirs have 4 toes on their front feet and 3 toes on their hind feet. So you can already see there's kind of an issue with that. What odd-toed or even-toed actually does refer to is how the animal's weight is distributed. So for an even-toed ungulate, they usually have their weight distributed on 2 of their toes, whereas for odd-toed ungulates, they typically have their weight distributed on 1 or 3 toes, and that's what you see for tapirs. And so that's just kind of 2 different branches of the hoofed mammals, of the ungulates. And most ungulates that you find in the world, such as not horses, we'll get into that in a second, but most ungulates that you find in the world, such as deer, for example, are actually even-toed ungulates. They are the more numerous. So for odd-toed ungulates, tapirs being members of this family actually means that their closest relatives are horses and rhinoceros.
Wow.
And they don't look very much like either one of those. So you can see there's quite a bit of diversity. One of the kind of interesting things about odd-toed ungulates is that they used to be much, much more numerous. And a lot of the actually megafauna, kind of prehistoric megafauna, like the woolly rhinoceros that you think of, the really, really big mammals were actually odd-toed ungulates. But a lot of those kind of lines have since died out. So can
I go back real quick, though? I don't mind to interrupt you, but let's go back to this whole idea. So the odd-toed really has nothing to do with the fact that it has an odd number of toes on each.
No.
On each toe. That's even I didn't even know that myself. There we go. So
yes. So it refers to how the weight bearing
that is really interesting. Okay, so back to these being a very, very old group of mammals.
Yes. So Central American tapirs are one of 4 kind of main species of tapir. Like we said, we have the Malayan tapir found in southern Asia primarily, and then we have the Central American tapir. We have the mountain tapir, which is actually found in South America, and then the kind of main South American or lowland tapir, which is also found primarily in Brazil, I believe. And if you kind of imagine that map in your head, you might notice that there's some gaps in there. And you might ask yourself, well, how did they get to where they are? And so tapirs, and this is a very long time ago, tapirs did used to be more widespread. There used to be species of tapir that are now very long extinct, that lived all the way up into the United States. And since then, they've become the only really ones that we have left are the much more tropical.
What you're saying, Kayla, is I've heard this term used a lot. They're sometimes referred to as living fossils.
Yes.
And that's kind of an interesting, from a biology terminology, it doesn't mean that they live a long time, right? They're not living fossils like a living dinosaur would be, right? They are. But what's that term mean when people say that?
What it kind of means is that tapirs haven't really changed very much from kind of the early lineages of tapirs. So if you look at like very old like fossils of species before the species that we have now, so the species that were more widespread throughout the Americas, the species that we find up in the northern United States, they are separate species. They are very old. They have since died out, but they also look very similar to the ones that we have today, which kind of implies that the whole method that the tapir has of just being very large, having its odd toes and its proboscis, is pretty successful at what they're doing. They don't need to have changed so much.
It also creates a little bit of a challenge sometimes because all 4 of these species around the world kind of look alike. Their color and their size differences. We all the time have people ask us questions. We're like, yeah, that's not a Belize or a Central American tapir, right? Yeah. So that is probably a Malaysian or a lowlands, right? So
yeah. And in Central America, actually, one of the main strongholds for tapirs, like one of their main populations, is actually in the Belize, Guatemala, what's called sometimes the Mayan corridor, the Mayan rainforest corridor. And this is one of the larger stretches of uninterrupted rainforest. Because like we said, tapirs, they really like being in this kind of very deep and undisturbed rainforest. They are pretty shy. They don't really like to be around people. And they need, because they're so large, they need pretty large and uninterrupted stretches of rainforest to really support these populations that we would consider healthy. In tapirs, actually, we've learned that tapirs actually move around quite a lot more than you might think that they do. And
well, Kayla, I have a quick question for you. You know, we have these trail cameras all over the rainforest where we've done a lot of work with our jaguar projects and our, obviously the big cat projects we've heard already about, but we see a lot of tapirs on here. Okay. Well, an awful lot of tapirs, right? So, it's very hard to identify them individually, but 2 things come to mind when I see them is, first of all, the sheer number of them that we actually see. And second, these things love water. We see them in the water all the time. So can you tell me a little bit about, first of all, this being a stronghold, as you mentioned, of them in Belize, but also a little bit about what is it with tapirs in water?
Yeah, so tapirs really do like water quite a bit, which is actually very interesting. They are really good swimmers, actually. You might not think so looking at, again, how big these animals are, but they're very good swimmers. They like to be near water. They also like to be near kind of these mud hollows, which kind of keeps them cool during the day. It gets very hot in the rainforest during the day, and if you're a very big animal, you have to take some inventive measures to cool down sometimes. Tapirs, they do swim very well, and what they can do, and this is very cute, is that they can use their little flexible nose as kind of a snorkel. So they can stick that above the water and breathe through it while they're swimming. So that's really interesting. Yes, we've seen a lot of tapir pictures of them in streams, wading through streams, splashing around in streams. They are very very water loving animals. And
that's really important for the rainforest as well, isn't it?
Yes.
I think we're going to get to that in a few moments of what the tapir is actually doing in the water.
Yes. So one of the tapir's primary role in the rainforest is, ecologically speaking, is that they are seed spreaders, because tapirs are herbivores, so they are plant eating. And they eat a lot of seeds, they eat a lot of fruits and plant matter. If you see at the Belize Zoo, when they feed the tapirs, it's very much just like a very nice fruit salad. You kind of want to go in there and steal a little bit of it for yourself, honestly. Maybe that's just me. But so they eat a lot of fruits, and when this fruit passes through their system, they end up spreading a whole lot of seeds. And this is very important for the rainforest, because a lot of times these fruits have actually specially adapted pretty much specifically for this. They've adapted to be attractive to these herbivores, who then eat them and spread their seeds to new location, and the plants grow up. And this is very important for ensuring first of all, just the healthy populations of these plants, but also ensuring just rainforest diversity in general. So you can see that tapirs are very important seed spreaders in the rainforest. However, tapirs, when you say herbivore, a lot of times in people's minds, this means prey species. And this is sometimes true for tapirs, especially very young tapirs when they're a lot smaller. They can be preyed on by a variety of different animals. But the thing about an adult tapir, and this is why it's kind of an advantage for them to be so big, is that they're really so big that they're not an easy prey species for pretty much anything. So we've talked earlier in this series about jaguars. We've talked about harpy eagles, which are some of the largest and most ferocious predators in the rainforest. And even a jaguar is going to have a really hard time going after an adult tapir. An adult tapir will probably outweigh a jaguar, and it would just take a lot of energy for this jaguar to bring down an adult tapir.
And they have really thick skin.
They have very, very thick skin. They are really sturdy animals. So it would take a lot of energy for a jaguar to go after a tapir. So most of the time, a jaguar is going to go after smaller prey that it has a much better chance of actually taking down. So really, once a tapir gets to its adult size, there's very few animals that can hunt a tapir.
Also, that when they're really young, okay, they have like a really unique appearance. And I remember, I often will hear Jamal, the conservation director at the Belize Zoo, refer to them as little watermelons.
Yeah. Well, yes, they are about watermelon shaped and watermelon sized, to be completely honest, when they're very young. Unfortunately, we have actually not seen baby tapirs on our trail cameras. That is something that I would very much like to see. But yes, they're very small, and they're actually a kind of, instead of the gray that their parents are, they're a brown color, and they have these kind of like squiggly white stripes all over them. And this is a kind of camouflage adaptation, because it kind of looks like leaf dapples on them, and it kind of keeps them safe. They're very cute, I will say. If you look at any pictures of baby tapir, they're very, very cute animals.
Okay, so back to then what are some of the threats then to these very large animals, knowing that they really don't have any major predators at a large size? As you mentioned, a jaguar is maybe 1/3 the size, okay, maybe, okay, of a tapir. So, so what's the problem?
Yeah, so a major problem actually facing Central American tapirs is that, again, they really need these uninterrupted stretches of rainforest. So this does bring up, all rainforest species, really any that you talk about, are going to be threatened by things like deforestation and habitat fragmentation. For tapirs specifically, a big problem that they've run into a lot is actually being hit by cars on the road. Because tapirs are, first of all, they're nocturnal, primarily nocturnal, and they're very hard to see at night because they are this kind of dark gray coloration, which is very nice for them to camouflage, very hard to see if they're on the side of the road or crossing the road. And this does tie into the fact that tapirs do move around. They do need these stretches of rainforest to move around through. When tapirs will try to cross the road, they're very often hit by cars. And this is, as you can imagine, a pretty severe problem for any population of animal, but especially for populations of tapirs, because we want the populations that we have right now that are already being threatened by things like deforestation and habitat fragmentation and this loss of habitat that is really threatening rainforest around the world. We want to keep the strongest populations that we have, which include the populations in the Mayan rainforest. We want to keep them as healthy and as strong as possible. So having tapirs that are regularly hit by cars along these roads, we're losing these populations. And of course, it's also very sad on an individual level to see such a beautiful animal really be kind of killed in this manner. In Belize, one of the initiatives that they've actually done for this is that they've made these tapir crossing signs. So these are just bright yellow signs that they stick up on the side of the road. They stick them up in areas of the road that are going near the rainforest where the tapirs might be crossing through. And it's just telling people, hey, slow down a little bit. I mean, people don't want to hit tapirs with their cars either.
No,
if you imagine hitting if you imagine hitting a 300 to 600 pound animal with your car is not going to be very happy with that.
Right.
So people also don't want to hit these animals with their cars. There's an initiative to put these signs up all over the place, kind of paired with some education initiatives to let people know, hey, we're having this problem with the tapirs. Here's what you can do to help us protect these tapirs and to help, avoid totaling your car on the road at night. And this has actually been pretty effective at reducing the number of road deaths in these areas for tapirs. So that's kind of And
recently, though, the Belize Zoo has been working an initiative across the country where they're actually building these animal bridges, right? So they can cross from one side of the road to the other by basically going overpasses. Yes. Is another word for it, then so they can walk above the road, right? They get from one side to the other.
Yeah, that's actually also a really interesting thing. The tapirs don't really like crossing the road either. The tapirs, they don't like people. They don't like cars. They wouldn't be crossing the road in this way if they had other options. And so the idea is to give them other options, give them safer options where they can connect to different parts of their habitat. Because as we've kind of mentioned a little bit, this idea of habitat fragmentation. So habitat fragmentation is kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's when you take one big piece of habitat, such as one big piece of a rainforest, and you break it up into a bunch of little smaller pieces. And oftentimes this is through human construction, such as constructing roads. And, we might look at a road and think, well, that's, it's not very big. Surely the animals can just get back and forth over it. But as we've seen with the tapirs in this example, what we see with a lot of other animals is that it's actually very hazardous for them to get over these roads. And additionally, for smaller animals, for tapirs, of course, they're herbivores, so they don't eat anything else. But for predators, you see sometimes that maybe the predator can make it over, but their prey might not, because their prey is much smaller and the road is a much bigger obstacle for them. So habitat fragmentation is actually a pretty severe problem for a lot of forest environments, and is a pretty severe problem for the Central American rainforest right now. It's one of the major conservation problems that animals and organizations are facing in really any rainforest, but especially the Central American rainforest right now. So one of the kind of conservation success stories, one of the main conservation initiatives is called the Mayan Rainforest Corridor. And the Mayan Rainforest Corridor is an initiative, and we'll of course put a bunch of links in the description for this, that you can go and learn more about this yourself. It's a really very interesting initiative. And the idea of the Mayan Rainforest Corridor is to create a corridor of uninterrupted rainforest that is not being, fragmented or torn up or subjected to this kind of human construction, so that these animals that live in the rainforest, and especially the bigger animals like your tapirs, your jaguars, your harpy eagles, they have the space that they need to move from one space to another within this rainforest, and they can it just ensures the health of these larger populations within the rainforest, and ensures the health of the rainforest itself, and makes sure that these animals that are like tapirs that are so critical to ensuring the health of the rainforest get all of the space that they need to live their little tapir lives within it.
So Kayla, that's been really interesting, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions out there. I still have questions about tapirs every time I go to the zoo, or every time I learn about them. And you've written some really great articles and placed them up on our website, and we'll share them with our listeners as well about the corridors, but also about all the tapirs we've captured on our trail cameras, which is a lot of fun. You actually we have cameras now which have taken multiple pictures, and it seems like they're playing in the water half the time. And you've been down there to help set up some of those cameras, which is fun too. So lots of questions, but also not just asking questions of us, but going and learning more about these truly, truly inspiring animals. One of the ways you can do that is go to the Belize Zoo's website. They are a major conservation center, and one of our partners for tapir conservation in basically Central America, and is, I believe, the world probably at this point, and to learn some more. But Kayla, anything else you want to go ahead and just let people know about tapirs before we...
They are the national animal of Belize. I don't know if we've said that.
We did not say that. That is amazing.
That is one of the fun facts about them. They're the national animal of Belize. I believe, because we were talking about the Belize Zoo, I believe that a tapir, April the tapir, was actually the very first animal that was rescued by the Belize Zoo founder, Sharon Matola. I believe April the tapir was actually orphaned because of a road collision. And that was how she became the first rescued animal in what would become the Belize Zoo, which is one of our main partners. And again, really an incredible resource, an incredible opportunity to learn more about these animals. If you have any questions about tapirs, the professionals at the Belize Zoo they spend, every day with these animals, taking care of these animals. They can tell you anything that you want to know about a tapir.
And we have some great video up on our YouTube channel about the tapirs being fed.
Yes.
Whenever we bring groups down there. So please feel free to ask questions. Always an amazing and inspiring animal to see and interact with and learn more about. Next month, we've got a special surprise for you, because we are going to head out into the ocean. What are we going to be doing next month, Kayla?
Next month, we are going to be talking about corals.
Corals are an animal, so we're okay. We're going to learn why they're an animal as well, okay? And corals are really important, right? And we're going to kind of have this as being like a little bit of a Christmas corals,
yes,
right?
Yes, we're going to have a very special Christmas corals episode for next month.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. And as always, if there's any questions, please let us know. And thank you, Kayla, for yet another wonderful, inspiring animal tale.
Yeah, thank you as well.